ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you?
It's time to flip a coin and find out.
Well, we need to know what we're calling it for here.
We're calling it to see who's got the best sports knowledge here on the Coin Flip with Martin Kelly
and Jacob Zimmerman.
Flip it again. Sort of a special episode here on the Coin Flip podcast. Jacob Zimmerman, Martin Kelly, ready to bounce back from our last episode where we talked some NBA, back over to our weekly series in the National Football League, but we are sort of breaking this week into two parts given the special circumstances with a load of Thursday day games. You're usually getting a Thursday night game, but it's three of them given that it's Thanksgiving. We also have the first ever Black Friday NFL football game, and then later in the week we will do the rest of what is going to be Week 12 in the NFL. Can't believe we are now in our 12th week of predicting games in the National Football League, but of course, as we always start off the pod, Martin, give me your breakdown of Week 11. It's obvious right here on screen, Martin, you had your best week of the season, going 11-3. Martin, kind of take a victory lap here. You beat me, even though I had a solid week going 9-5, and kind of give me the games that stuck out to you.
No victory lap. You know I don't take pleasure in taking victory laps. All I say is that it was just a good week and had a good amount of fun. Some good games, some interesting games, some games that you never thought would have ended the way they did. Obviously, the Ravens getting the win on Thursday night, the ugly game between the Steelers and the Browns, Matt Canada getting fired, the small late comeback by the Raiders versus the Dolphins, the fact that the Raiders held the Dolphins to 20 points, very interesting. I don't want to talk about the Bears game. The Jaguars were the Jaguars. South Canada beat the Chargers, not a surprise there. Texans beat the Cardinals, that was a fun game. The Cowboys beat the Panthers. We saw that coming. I don't know how Tommy DeVito beat the Commanders, but then I forgot the Commanders don't have a defense anymore. The 49ers did what the 49ers did. The Buffalo Bills were mad and got revenge for Week 1. Los Angeles, LA Rams came back from that deficit. I was shocked by that. I was amazed by that. That was a fun game to watch. The Sunday night game, Vikings Broncos, came down to that last play by Josh Dobbs. Just couldn't get it done. And then, of course, Monday night, Eagles Chiefs. Eagles continuing to talk about how they got robbed in the Super Bowl, but I don't buy that. They didn't get robbed in the Super Bowl. They failed to score on 3 drives that they should have gotten touchdowns, but nonetheless, they got their revenge on the Chiefs. It was a fun week, not a high-scoring week, but plenty of games that put up points, plenty of games that were, getting close to spreads. So it was an overall fun week, and let's see what Week 12 brings.
Martin coming out the gate hot with a Week 11 rundown. Martin, you mentioned a lot of things there I want to mention. Low scoring. These primetime unders are absolutely smashing. I have not, hopped out on that train, but public warning out there, if I do, then you might want to stop because it'll start going the other way. Martin, then you mentioned the Bears. They did have a crushing loss. That's a tough loss.
I didn't mention the Bears. I dodged that one.
I'm not going to tease you with that one, Martin. I will say, because the Bears had their best performance of the season. They did, flat out. You can't argue. That's their best performance the entire year, I would argue. Who put up 26 on the Detroit Lions. It was impressive in my eyes. It was impressive in my eyes, and they had a nice game.
I will give you that. I'm not mad at you. I'm not upset if I do sound like that. I apologize. But my only point is that wasn't their best overall game. Their best overall game was the Washington win over them on Thursday night. That was their best overall game. I don't want to talk about the Bears. I'm done with them. The season's over with. I can't wait until 2025.
Anywho, Martin, for some other games that are not as personal, this 2 games stuck out to me, and it was 2 big drops in these games. The Chargers definitely should have beat the Packers. I mean, the kid Johnston out of TCU. Rough pick. I think he's got some potential, but he's got some butterfingers right now. He needs to, put some stickum back on the gloves. Maybe some of these stadiums can get some domes, and it'll help out with the rainy weather. But until then, We're going to see some plays happen every so once in a while. It just happened to be so that we got 2 back-to-back days, same week in the NFL. The Chargers lose a depressing one at Green Bay. And then, Martin, of course, the game that I was watching the entire night from start to finish. A lot of times I'm watching Red Zone or a quad box. Not too often this season or in seasons past have I, sat in one spot and watched them from start to finish. I did this with the Eagles-Chiefs game. It was very worthy of doing so, given that it was the Super Bowl rematch. It lived up to the hype of a great game. Martin, unfortunately, I lost out on the final leg of a teaser. I needed the Chiefs, and of course, Marquez Valdez-Scantling had a
Yes.
moment that he will not be able to make up for over the next couple of days, but perhaps, next week, late in the playoffs would be great for Kansas City fans if he can have himself a get-back moment. But Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, they did not live up to their standard of excellence, and I think the Eagles kind of got a little lucky in this game by the way certain X factor plays played out. But all in all, Philly gets a big time, marquee win.
That is true. Like I said, the Eagles Chiefs game was a fun Monday night game. I ended up watching the Peyton Eli broadcast. I always enjoy that broadcast. I always enjoy watching Peyton be the player that he wants to be. He's still so engaged. He watches the game. He ignores Eli most of the time and just keeps talking about the game. Eli is actually trying to do, interviews and conversations, which I still like too. But it's just fun to watch Peyton in his zone. You mentioned South Canada and the Chargers. I mean, for the Chargers, sure, if a D3 coach didn't work, Jacob, how about a former Division 2 coach and a former Division 1 coach? Maybe Paul Peterson, who got let go by Utah Tech. Maybe he would be a better head coach than Brandon Staley, considering the Chargers want to go find a bunch of random college coaches to go coach a pro team. So, hey, Paul Peterson, if you're listening to this, go apply for the Los Angeles Chargers. There might be a job for you.
Oh man, that would have fans in Los Angeles and San Diego screaming. But Martin, as for our picks in Week 11, let's wrap this up. You went 11-3, 3 underdog hits. I went 9-5, 1 underdog hit. Martin, you're now 91-73 on the season through 164 games. I'm 102-62. Martin, you're 18 games, I believe, above 500. And when you look at this, Martin, compared to a couple weeks ago, you trail me by only 11 games. So we've got, through week 18, because there's 17 games, one by each team. Yeah, you've got 6 weeks of predicting games to hunt me down, to walk me down, and come back and win this season prediction series. But without further ado, Martin, kind of some important games in the grand scheme of things, as I think a lot of people tune into the TV to watch football. People who aren't even really football fans end up watching football some way or another on Thanksgiving. So Martin, kind of touch on the tradition, the importance of Thanksgiving Day football, because your squad, the Chicago Bears, they're kind of in that black and blue NFC North famous division that seems to always have teams playing on this day.
Yeah, so obviously the Detroit Lions been playing since 1934 was their first Thursday night Thanksgiving game. They've been playing it since then. The Cowboys, they joined up in, I want to say, in the late 60s. It wasn't when Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones took over. It was about the 60s they started playing Thanksgiving, and obviously we know about the third game, but that's just for ratings and TV, all whatnot for NBC. But, Jacob, a little bit of history or just something to remember by. I don't think you and I will ever forget. I won't ever forget when the butt fumble happened on a Thursday night Thanksgiving game. I actually think that was one of the first few Thursday night Thanksgiving games. I still appreciate Mark Sanchez for the funniest moment in NFL history. an entire ass made a football fumble on the field, and the Patriots scored, and it was hilarious and funny, and still one of the most memorable things I've ever seen. Thanksgiving, football and all that is fun throughout the entire day. You get to eat and then watch football, then sleep, then wake up and watch football, eat a slice of cherry pie or pumpkin pie, go to bed, watch some highlights, and then wake up and do it all over again. So, not only just Thanksgiving, Jacob, but this entire week, the final week of college football, week 12 of the NFL, there's games on Friday. I mean, college basketball, this entire week, NBA, NHL, it's probably one of the greatest weekends in pro sports history just because of everything's going down. So this is going to be a fun 4 games because we got the Black Friday game as well.
And we get to experience it with more family, more friends. Not always are we watching the pigskin being tossed with the aunts and uncles, the cousins, whoever you're going to see while you're eating pumpkin pie on Thursday. But nevertheless, Martin, let's get into these Week 12 picks. 4 of them on screen. Of course, your 3, all Eastern time, 12:30, 4:30, 8:20, boom, 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 on Thanksgiving, and then on Friday, Black Friday, a 3 o'clock in the afternoon game. Kind of a weird timing there on Prime Video. But nevertheless, Martin, Packers, Lions, no timer needed for this video, but kick it off.
No timer needed for this video at all. I'm going Detroit. I'm not picking Southern Canada this week. I've only picked them twice, so hopefully I don't have to pick them ever again for this season. But the Lions are the better team. They finally got Jameis Williams involved last week. He got one of the touchdowns to cut the lead down short before everything collapsed for the Bears. They got a running game. They got a defense. The Lions will win.
Yeah, Martina, I'm going to roll with the Lions here as well. I think the Packers have had some wins here and there in the season, but all in all, this isn't going to be a playoff team. They beat the Rams a couple weeks ago. That was without Matt Stafford. We were just talking about that Chargers game. They didn't deserve to win that. I think, pretty much everyone can, come to their senses at this point that the Lions are a better team than the Los Angeles Chargers. But we know NFL math doesn't always work out that well. But, the Lions on a 3-game win streak, you could look at this game and say, maybe it's the one, where they drop one. It's hard to, go on 4-game win streaks in the National Football League. But, Detroit, Martin, they're known around, hardcore NFL fans as over the last 2 or 3 seasons or so, they've been the best team in covering the spread. And while we aren't picking spreads, we pick money line outright picks here on the Coin Flip Podcast predictions, but we kind of mentioned the spread as well. Martin, just this season alone, they're tied for second in covering percentage. They're 7-3 against the spread, and when they're favored by at least a touchdown, the game is not even. There's a game within a game. Going on Thanksgiving. The real game is, can the Lions win by more than a touchdown? And when they're so consistent, when they're playing a team like the Packers who, can keep it low scoring at times, it just tells you that the Lions are going to win this game. They're just going to find a way to do so. I feel like a lot of the advanced metrics, favor the Lions. One thing that you can respect about the Lions is think about a lot of these contenders, Martin. The Chiefs, the Ravens, both conferences. Think about them for a sec. What team is able to run and throw the ball as, consistently and as solid as the Lions can? You could maybe argue the Niners, maybe the Eagles, but the Lions can do it both ways. In the air, on the ground. I love the Lions, not only this season to do some damage, maybe win a playoff game or so, but Barton, I'm going to pick against Jordan Love here. I think they'll get an interception or force a fumble. And, a lot of high spreads here on Thanksgiving. And I feel like, that's typically how Thanksgiving games often play out. There's not a lot of close games. I can remember, in years past, all 3 games being a blowout or, 2 out of 3, aren't even worth watching by halftime. So, yeah, Martin, I'm going to roll with the Lions here. I'll pencil them in or type them in. But on to the Commies and the Cowboys. This one's in Dallas, and they are favored by 11.
Yeah, I'll make this just another quick one again. I'm gonna take the Cowboys. The commies have no defense. They have no one to pass rush. They have no one to cover. They just are basically barren a barren wasteland in a cabin tree because there's nothing back there. Their offense can play. Their offense can score. They can put up points. Sam Howell hasn't played totally terrible, and Eric Bieniemy has proven that he can get away from Kansas City and still run an efficient offense in most ways. Of course, he doesn't have Patrick Mahomes, um, but the Cowboys are better. Dak will have a few touchdowns. Parsons will have a sack or two here. There might be an interception by the defense, but this won't be last year where it was the Cowboys and the Giants pulled off the upset. I don't see that happening this year. The Cowboys will be the better team.
The Cowboys are certainly the better team. The question is, can the boys pull through in, prime time? They kind of maybe haven't had a lot of eyes locked in on them the past couple of weeks. They've been monster favorites. You might catch them on red zone every now and then, but yeah, 11 points, it's interesting. I think, that Cardinals loss early in the season really stained red in a lot of people's eyes. And I think the Cowboys have kind of, I don't know if they've, turned a corner, if they've turned the page, but I think they've gotten that bad loss out of their system. They had the Trevin Diggs injury. They kind of rallied around that. And they've been performing pretty solid ever since, especially when they're big favorites. Martin, I think they are, likely going to win this one flat out and maybe even cover as well. I mean, this one's about the Commanders, though. Think about how disappointing not only this division has been, but the New York Giants have been. The New York Giants have been the laughing stock of the NFL this season, flat out. And yet they've swept the Commanders. They beat them twice this year. They beat them 14-7, back in October. And then this month, last week, Martin, they beat them 31-19. The Commanders' locker room is gone. Ever since those trades happened with their D linemen, that locker room's gone. It just is. They lost to the Seahawks in a close one. You lose a heartbreaker one week. You lose a complete trap game the next. And I don't think they're going to be able to get up against the Cowboys. They have you actually have the capability of coming back if they fall down early because Terry McLaurin is such a scary. They call him Scary Terry for a reason, Martin. You got Sam Howell's out there. He's kind of been an interception machine, but maybe that's what you need when it's time to just gunsling it. I mean, he's passed for more than 400 yards than Dak Prescott has this season, if you can believe that. He has one extra game, but he's right there with him in touchdowns. So I think the Cowboys should roll if their defense shows up. But if they're focused on the turkey, if they're focused on their family, if they're focused on the damn cheerleaders, Martin, the Cowboys will not get this one done. The Commanders will sneak in there. But if it's the Cowboys that we know, if the Cowboys that show up, they're going to find a way to get this one done. Cowboys are one of the best teams against the spread as well. I'm taking the boys here, Martin. On to the 49ers and the Seahawks, probably the closest matchup of the week. But the 49ers, Vegas likes them. They're favored by a full touchdown on the road in Seattle, who's still above 500.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. Niners, Seahawks. I think, Jacob, this will probably be the best Thanksgiving night game we have probably ever seen since they started doing this. I can't think of the last great Thursday night Thanksgiving game. I could be wrong. Maybe there was a Baltimore Steelers. Excuse me, a Baltimore and a Steelers game back in the day that may have been good, but can't really think off the top of my head. Um, the Seahawks are 30-20 all time versus the Niners, and Pete Carroll's actually 8-5 versus Kyle Shanahan. But Jacob, the Niners have won the last three games, and they've won that last three games combined by an 89-43 score. I mean, when you're nearly up 6 touchdowns in three combined games versus one other team, that's pretty much a guaranteed ass whooping. But I'm going to pick the upset here. I'm not going with the Niners. I'm going with Seattle. They're in Seattle. It'll be Thursday night. It's probably going to be raining. It's probably going to be wet. It's probably going to be a slick game. I feel like if Seattle can get their defense straight and their offense efficient and not turn the ball over and throw it with confidence to DK and to JSN and to Lockett and get Charbonnet and Walker running, I do think the Seahawks are poised to pull off this upset. I know they lost to the Rams. I know they gave up those leads late, but on a short week, I trust Seahawks more than I trust the Niners. Give me Seattle.
Trusting the Seahawks more than the Niners is a take, Martin. It's definitely a take. I think the public favors San Fran. I think their eyes are still set farther in the playoffs now. Seattle's kind of the team they were last year. They're pretty sneaky. Their passing offense is top 10. Kind of. But when you look at it, their defense is not anything special. Their defense is kind of middle of the pack all across the board. Passing, rushing, scoring. The Niners have had some woes here and there. They've looked like the best team in the NFL, probably on multiple weeks this season. And then they've looked like a team that, could have all of a sudden a bunch of water in the ship and you're starting to sink. Looking back at, some of these games, specifically, Martin, at their last 5, big wins against Tampa Bay and Jacksonville, but before that they were on that three-game losing streak. You beat a team like Jacksonville by 31. I think that's a huge statement. You hold off, Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. You're at home. Those are 2 quality wins. It's not like they were fluky wins after a 3-game losing streak, and they're still kind of, on the downtrend, and, it's kind of disguised. Those losses they had, the Vikings were rolling. Cincinnati looked good when Joe Burrow was healthy. Cleveland with that, amazing defense. So their losses haven't been too bad. Brock Purdy's kind of found the zone. The question mark is, to me, can Seattle's home crowd play a factor? And if the crowd really gets into it, if they don't go down early, watch out. Seattle can make it close. But, Martin, I'm going to roll with the Niners here. I'm going to pick a favorite again. I think McCaffrey, he found the end zone. He got back in the end zone last week. This guy's a stud. He should be higher than Brock Purdy in the MVP race. Ayuk has been very underrated. He could be in line for the Pro Bowl, if that even means anything. But, Martin, I'm taking the Niners, a divisional opponent. Probably 7 points is dangerous to take in a divisional on the road. So I would say Seattle more than likely covers, but given the stakes, given maybe this could be a practice playoff game for San Fran. Who knows? Especially with the Eagles, Martin, winning that game against the Chiefs. If San Fran wants to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, they would need to win this game. If they have that need-win mentality, they will get it done. I'm rolling with the Niners. On to the Dolphins and the Jets. Martino closing out the Coin Flip podcast here. Miami, -10.
Yeah, this is not even. This is these 4 games were just not so hard to pick. I'm not saying like that's not fun, but I'm just saying like these games were like you can just look at them and be like no brainers. Tim Boyle is a good kid. Trevor Simeon's a good man. Zach Wilson likes older women. That's not a combination for a good quarterback locker room. That's not a good combination to to win games. Mike McDaniels is by default the better coach than Robert Saleh, but I would choose Robert Saleh over Mike McDaniels just because I believe Saleh is a more solid and more confident coach. I think McDaniels is a great offensive mind, and I think he's transitioned what Kyle Shanahan did down in Miami to his own liking, and I think he's done an excellent job with that, turning that franchise around, especially with Tua, who we all thought should have retired after the ugly hit in Cincinnati, where he just looked like a deer in headlights. It was so bad to watch. I just like it was hard to watch. But in this game, it's not even going to be close. It's the Dolphins. I fear that this game could be worse than the 70-20 win that they had over the Broncos. I think the Dolphins, if they wanted to, I think they could score 80 points in this game. Jalen Ramsey was all over the field, intercepting 2 balls. I mean, he made Las Vegas look like nothing, even though it was a close win. This Black Friday game is going to get ugly, Jacob. I don't even think this is going to even get near close. Tim Boyle's a good kid, but there's no way I would pick him over Tua. Give me the Dolphins in an easy pick.
Yeah, Martin, I agree as well. It'll be an easy pick. The real question here is obviously with the spread, and I think they're going to blow the spread out of the water. Martin, you hit it right on the head. Like I've said, week in and week out, we've faded each other on some picks. We've agreed with each other on some picks, and we are going to agree again on the Finns. And it's pretty much all because of the situation going on at quarterback for the Jets. In the media, Nick Wright has done a good job of kind of highlighting who Tim Boyle actually is. Martin, in college, this guy was horrible. He had way more picks than touchdowns in college, and now all of a sudden he is supposed to be a starting quarterback for this week in the NFL. I mean, this is just a disaster. I mean, Martin, we've seen the Dolphins get a lead and not take their foot off the gas pedal at all whatsoever. And I think that's what's going to happen here. It's a Black Friday game. And there's just going to be there's going to be a black cloud above New York after this game as well. Because, Martin, I get it. They've had some games that kind of balloon these stats. But in the NFL, they're number 1 in passing yards per game. They're number 2 in rushing yards per game. Think about that. That's a problem. Like they're like the Lions that I was just talking about. But they really stomp their throat on teams that are bad. The only question here to me is, can Sauce Gardner and the rest of that defense back there in the secondary for New York do anything against Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? I mean, can they do anything? Can they do anything? Because Tyreek Hill, he's going to be on the field time in, time out again. I think he's going to go for 2 touchdowns. They're going to go crazy. I think Achan's probably actually going to be back here on Thursday. And if he's good to go, so are the Dolphins. Jets would be lucky in this game to put up 15 points. They'll be lucky to put up 15. I think the Dolphins will easily put up at least 3 touchdowns and a couple field goals. So I'm going Miami minus 10. So those are the predictions here. Half week 12, highlighting the Thanksgiving and Black Friday game. And we'll get the rest of the week. I know there's 16 matchups. First in a couple weeks, there's 16 matchups. So we had to break this one apart. But all in all, Martin, you are chipping back at me in our season Pick'em series. But that is week 12. Any other week 12 thoughts?
We're gonna get to all the big picks later in the week. Just to wrap up Thanksgiving, this is gonna be a fun one. This is gonna be interesting, and I brought up stats when it came to the Niners and the Seahawks and all-time records. Jacob, I'll leave you with a question here. Give me a guess of the all-time record you think the Lions have versus the Packers on Thanksgiving games. Just a ballpark number. What do you think the record is?
Just Lions versus Packers matchups.
Yes.
Can you tell me how many times they've played in total?
They have played 21 times.
I'm gonna say it's like 19-2 for the Packers.
It's 12-8-1 in favor of the Lions.
You're saying they tied one year?
Yeah, they tied one year. That's probably back in when overtime wasn't allowed. That's probably back in the overtime wasn't until the 58 NFL championship game with the Colts and the Giants. So it probably was the early 50s, late 40s that they probably tied on a Thanksgiving game. But yes, 12-8-1 the Lions are over the Packers, even with Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre.
Martin with a little random Thanksgiving related trivia to close out the pod. So another episode of the CFP in the books. We appreciate your support on the last couple of these, especially, our Martin. I don't know if you know this. I think I told you our NBA video did really well. So we got to make another NBA video pretty damn soon. But nevertheless, we are rolling here. Martin, I'm hitting about 61-62% of these, and you are hitting about 55% of these picks outright. But if we keep going how we're going, Martin, we're going to continue to climb. But, Martin, I've won 5 weeks so far. You've won 4 weeks. And we've tied in 2 weeks in our weekly series. So, yeah, we'll see how this week goes.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see what the records say.
I'm Jacob. That's Martin. See ya.
Peace.